Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. It's your girl Lori, and I feel like this is a good time to remind you of your boundaries as we're heading into the holiday week. Even regardless, even if you're watching this in the summertime sometime, it doesn't matter. It's still going to be valid regardless of the time that you watch this. And it's protecting your boundaries. Please go out and look at the playlist here on YouTube. There's like 5 videos, 10-minute or so videos that are going to really help you understand your boundaries. But it's important that, especially when you find yourself, listen, we can all say, oh yeah, I'm great with my boundaries, until it's tested, right? Remember, you have to test, you have to be tested in order to utilize your skills. And the skills are protecting your boundary, right? So if right from the door, if you think that showing up for the holiday or at a function or whatever prevents a lot of stress, then you just lowered your boundary. Nobody overstepped that boundary. See, the big thing is that you keep saying people overstep a boundary. No, they don't. No, they do not. They literally cannot overstep a boundary unless you allow that to happen. And by allow it to happen, meaning, oh man, if I don't show up to said thing, oh, it's going to be a nightmare. I just don't feel like hearing it. Great. So then don't get upset about somebody overstepping a boundary because you just lowered your boundary. See, when you lower your boundary, you literally are like, here, step over it. You don't get a chance to get upset. You're not allowed to be mad now. Like, you put yourself in that position by lowering your boundary. You got to understand that when you set boundaries, and I talk a lot about it in that boundary series, that when you're setting those boundaries, they're always for you. Stop with the individual boundaries and stop thinking that people are just from the door. The second you go, this is my boundary, people are like, okay, great. It's not going to happen. You have to be consistent in holding it. And that doesn't mean constantly repeating your boundary either. You have to hold it. So as we're going into these, these next weird couple weeks, and I say weird because so many people have an issue around the holidays. But again, you're not obligated, right? You don't have to show up for Thanksgiving. You don't have to show up for Christmas. You don't have to show up for a random barbecue in June. Like, you don't have to show up to these things. And don't expect other people to do it either. Right? Nobody owes you anything because you're their parent. Nobody owes you anything because you're their kid. No, they don't. So this is where it's going to take time for you to really get clear on what your boundaries are. How can I break that down? Allowing yourself to say, okay, what are my goals? How can I protect my peace? And does what I'm doing encourage my peace? Like, does it encourage it? Does it help me move that needle forward? Does it really help me? If the answer to that question is no, then yeah, don't do it. Listen, there's going to be things in life you're going to gotta do, like pay taxes, like, yeah, pay bills. Like, there are certain, I guess you don't have to, remember, but yeah, those are things that there isn't really a compromise on. But when it comes to your boundaries, stop compromising. Listen, every now and again, you're going to have to be like, okay, like, let's compromise on something, but never, ever at the cost of your peace. Stop trying to people please. Today, tomorrow, the holidays, in July. Stop with the people pleasing, right? You can't please anybody. See, you have to realize people who aren't good with themselves, I don't care what you do, how much money you give them, how many things that you give them, how many opportunities, it doesn't mean anything, right? Because they're not happy with themselves. If they're not happy with themselves, it doesn't really matter, and you're going to constantly be spinning out. And the more you're people pleasing for other people, the more you're saying no to you. Talk about not having boundaries. That's not holding your own boundaries. And that's a big part of that boundary playlist, is holding your boundaries. Because again, that's a human nature thing. For X amount of years, you haven't really had boundaries. And if you had, they've been wishy-washy and all this stuff. So of course, nobody's just going to be like, oh, she set a boundary. Okay, that's fine. No. So you got to be willing to piss some people off. You got to be willing to get them upset, not on purpose. You're not intentionally doing it. All you're doing is holding a boundary. Their reaction is not your issue, just like your reaction to their boundary isn't their problem either. So this is why you have to accept things for as they are, not how you want them to be. If it's not serving you, you distance from it. Or vice versa. If you're not serving them, they have a right to distance from you. No, they don't need to give you 67 reasons as to why they did it. That's protecting their peace. So again, everything's going to have yin and yang. Everything I say to you is actually going to pertain to you as well. So you have to say to yourself, okay, again, if you get irritated with people, but you understand how, okay, if you can't get mad at an apple because it's an apple and you don't like apples, you can't get mad at the apple. The apple's an apple. You can say, I don't like apples. I wish it was a pear. I need it to be different. Okay, the apple doesn't care. The apple is not changing. You being miserable is a you issue. It's not the apple's issue. So it's the same thing in life. You know, if you know what you're dealing with, stop trying to understand it and manipulate it to change and do these things and do that thing. Stop. Stop. That's not a thing. It's not a thing. And all you're going to do is you're going to keep lowering your boundaries. So if you have to keep saying, listen, I said I'm not coming. Okay, if we've now said this 3 times, that's it. You've already dropped your boundary. Stop trying to make people comfortable with what your boundaries are. And it's so important, especially this time of the year, because you got to be careful of the manipulation. I talked about it before. You got to be careful of when people do the manipulation of, it might be her last Christmas. You better show up for your grandmother. No, not if it's going to be toxic. You don't got to show up for your grandmother. And you have to understand, people may try their hand because they want you to do something. And so they'll use that sort of gaslighting. Well, gaslighting is more like, well, you know, manipulation is like, hey, I'm going to manipulate you to do what I want you to. And gaslighting is like, no, you didn't really see that. You didn't really feel that. To now make you feel like you're a little crazy, right? Either one can happen, especially around this time of the year. Stop holding on to people just to say you have people. Why? Sometimes you gotta be alone. Don't bring your past trauma, unhealed trauma, into your current relationship with friends or spouses or partners. Don't do that. It's not their job to make you feel more comfortable because you have unhealed trauma. You have to heal that trauma. Just like you have to hold your boundaries. This is you taking ownership and being consistent. Don't just hold a boundary when it's convenient. Well, I'm going to this big party, gotta have my boundary. Yeah, that's great, hold it there, but hold it on a random Tuesday too. Of course, there's gonna be a level of compromise. That's what makes the world go round. There is a level of compromise, not at the cost of your peace though. So these are things that you have to understand. There's gonna be plenty of things in your life that you have to do, and you don't wanna do. But when it comes to dealing with these relatives of yours, that's not one of them. You're related, doesn't make you family. Know that. You're related. It doesn't make you family. You're just blood related. You have DNA that you share. You can be family with someone who has not an ounce of blood like you, like yours, in their system. That can be strong family. But you have to be your solid foundation. If you're empty inside, you're going to constantly be, you're going to constantly be looking for other people to fill that void. And that's not their job. That's not their job. Just because you're you're feeling bad mentally, that's fine. They don't have to derail it, but stop expecting them to fix it. This is your journey and yours alone. Yes, be there with people who are going to support you on your journey. And if they're not, they're not. Don't try to make them be. Don't think because they're a mom or a dad that this is the role. No, they don't owe that to you. It's the reality. So when you get clear in that with your boundaries, it's for you. Your relationships that you have and that you will form will be so much healthier because you're able to protect your peace and you're able to respect that somebody else is protecting their peace, even if you don't like what it is. Obviously, if it's super problematic for you, accept it for what it is, take the L, and distance yourself from that person or persons or situation. And yes, it is that easy. You have to be able to know that you are very important. You have to be your strongest foundation. You can't build a house on sand. I mean, you can, it's not going to last long. And that's other relationships that you're hoping to fill this void. I said this to you before, external things cannot give you internal peace. It's literally in the name, internal peace. So you have to be clear in that factor, and you have to be willing to know that you deserve to put yourself first. You have to be in that space to know that it's okay for you to put yourself as a priority. If you're not a priority, then you're going to sit there and you're never going to allow yourself to receive a compliment. You're never going to allow yourself to do self-care. You're never going to allow yourself to do all these things because you're going to be like, well, I have to do this. I have to do that. Don't do that and then expect other people to do it. Remember the rule of thumb here. If you're doing something kind, you do it because you choose to. Don't ever do something kind with the expectation that somebody needs to do something kind in return, because they don't. You know, if you're going to be kind and you want to do it, then do it because you're choosing to do it just because. If not, there's a level of manipulation that come into play there. So as we're going through this week, I felt like it was really important to give some of these last minute reminders so your holiday isn't a complete disaster. And remember, if it's going to be a complete disaster, sometimes you got to just not do it. It's okay. People will be all right. If they don't want to talk to you after that, then they just cleared out some little bit of gunk for you.